So, you've probably heard all about the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. But what if I told you the biggest threat wasn't to your gas tank, but actually to your dinner plate? Yeah, the story you heard about military brinksmanship and the risk to global oil, it's a big story, for sure. But it is not the whole story. We're going to show you what was really at stake.
Okay, let's just dive right in. The whole situation was built around a ticking clock, a hard deadline, April 6th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And believe me, the entire global economy was holding its breath.
All right, so the story you've most likely heard, the one all over the news, is that this is all about oil. And look, it's true, the Strait of Hormuz is an absolutely critical choke point. We're talking about a staggering 25% of the world's traded energy passing right through that tiny waterway. That's the official story, the one driving all the headlines.
But what if that whole narrative is exactly backward? In this explainer, we're going to show you the hidden reality, that this was really about a looming food crisis, not an energy one. That the military wasn't just seeing success, but also hidden attrition. And that the political drama? Well, that was far more than a sideshow. It was the real risk.
So let's peel back that first layer. And, this has absolutely nothing to do with filling up your car and everything to do with the food on your table. We're talking about fertilizer, the quiet engine of global agriculture, and in this case, a hidden economic time bomb just waiting to go off.
And check this out. It's a really simple chain reaction, but with just massive consequences. See, when the strait closes, the flow of natural gas, which is a key ingredient for modern fertilizer, it gets disrupted. That in turn halts fertilizer production, and the inevitable result? A huge spike in global food prices. It's a direct pipeline from energy geopolitics right to your grocery bill.
And listen, this isn't just some theory. Look at this number. By mid-March, prices for urea, which is a critical nitrogen fertilizer, had already exploded by roughly 50%. For farmers in the Northern Hemisphere, this price surge hit at the absolute worst possible time, right at the start of their planting season. And once that window closes, it's gone for the entire year.
So here's the real kicker. While all the headlines were screaming about oil prices today, the real economic shock was quietly building in the background. Set to hit your grocery bill in about 6 to 9 months, with a potential 20 to 40% rise in the cost of basic food.
Okay, let's peel back another layer now, the military situation. Because the official reports, they painted this picture of just overwhelming success. But the reality on the ground, well, it was way more complex and, frankly, a lot more dangerous.
And this chart just perfectly shows that disconnect. A U.S. mission failure rate of just 0.03%. I mean, that sounds incredible, right? A near-perfect operation. But that tiny number hides a much scarier fact. Despite weeks of heavy bombing, intelligence suggested that at least a third of Iran's missile launchers were still completely intact. Their offensive capability was hurt, for sure, but it was far from eliminated.
And on top of that military challenge, there was this really dangerous problem brewing internally. High-ranking officials, including the Army Chief of Staff, were actually being removed during active combat. Insiders call this a command coherence fracture, which is basically a breakdown in military leadership based on politics, not performance. And that creates a huge unpredictable risk right in the middle of a war.
So you've got this tense military stalemate, a brewing economic crisis, and deep political instability. And then, just like that, a single unpredictable event, a human wild card, comes in and changes the entire game.
An American F-15 fighter jet is shot down over Iran. And this wasn't just losing a piece of equipment. The pilot, a U.S. weapons system officer, was captured. Instantly, he becomes the single most valuable piece on the entire geopolitical chessboard.
So how does one person totally change a global crisis? Well, suddenly, it's not about supply chains anymore. It's not about military assets. It's all about one person. This one event gave Iran incredible leverage, hijacking the whole conflict and turning a systems problem into a very high-stakes human and political crisis.
And that brings us right to the final showdown. The capture of this pilot creates a brand new inflection point, completely changing the game as that April 6th deadline got closer and closer.
So, as we're heading into that deadline, these were the 3 most likely scenarios. The big favorite, at 55%, was just kicking the can down the road. Another extension. A partial deal was sitting at 30%, and direct military strikes were the least likely at 15%. The world was basically bracing for more of the same. But then,
Something straight out of a movie happened. The downed officer, hiding out on a 7,000-foot ridgeline and using an encrypted beacon, he signals his position. And then, in this incredibly daring pre-dawn operation deep inside Iran, Navy SEAL Team 6 gets him out. The mission was apparently so critical that President Trump monitored it for 7 hours while flying over the country.
And just look at the impact of that rescue. The numbers completely flipped. The probability of a deal jumped from 30% all the way up to 40%, making it the most likely outcome. Why? Because that successful rescue gave everyone the perfect political off-ramp. It was a massive optics win, and it allowed a deal to be framed from a position of strength, not desperation.
But here's the thing. While the entire world was glued to this Hollywood-style rescue, something else, something much more permanent, was happening in the background. A fundamental change to the very plumbing of the global financial system.
So this is what was really going on. Iran wasn't just blocking ships, it was creating a whole new economic reality. If you were a Western-aligned nation, you were out. But anyone else, you could pass, as long as you paid the toll. And not in US dollars. Nope, in Chinese yuan and cryptocurrency. They were literally stress testing a sanctions-proof financial system in real time.
So, in the end, a deal was reached. The immediate crisis was over. But the real story here might be the quiet birth of this whole new financial order. It makes you wonder, right? In the end, were the biggest winners the politicians who signed the deal, or were they the architects of a brand new sanctions-proof global trade system? And that is a story you probably won't hear on the evening news.